Chapter 4. Holiday History. Although I've made my living for over 20 years selling them, the 20s holiday I described earlier was my first and only experience as a guest on a package holiday. As a family, we never went on them. Indeed, Her Majesty's Passport Office were blissfully unaware of my existence until my school trip to France when I was 12. Summer holidays were instead spent persevering a 10-hour drive to a modest B&B in the West Country or searching for a caravan site in the gathering gloom in the Yorkshire Dales, which didn't belong to the Caravan Club. If only the AA roadmap had differentiated between members-only caravan club sites and farmers' field with standpipes and toilets which doubled as singles bars for daddy longlegs and clumsy moths, it would have saved us hours of dragging our sprite around country lanes. All too often our backseat hopes of a cosy Horlicks sat around a Formica table watching a tiny black and white portable telly dissolved in a passenger seat cry of, "Oh hell, it's another bloody caravan club site. Keep going, Brian." Given the price of fuel after the oil crisis in 1973, I couldn't help wondering if it would be more economical to join the bloody caravan club. Their sites assume the status of a mythical forbidden land, the Tobar equivalent of the Holy of Holies or King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, off limits to all but the chosen elite. What could make them so special? As we disconsolately drove away, the thick perimeter hedge concealed its hidden treasures. Having never seen inside one, my overactive 10-year-old mind imagined a lush Shangri-La with heated swimming pools, hot tubs and goalposts with nets. In researching his book, I finally found out. In order to qualify as a CL, a certified location, a caravan club designated site needed to possess the following riches: an emptying point for chemical closets, a safe drinking water supply, a bin for dry rubbish, and the jewel in the caravanning crown, public liability insurance cover. So, along with Father Christmas, the Tooth Fairy, Lance Armstrong and the electoral system, the caravan club resides in that not what I thought it was drawer. When we did find a non-caravan club site, we'd spend the week sheltering from the inevitable Yorkshire rain, which would assault the tinny roof like an angry snare roll as we played Scrabble whilst enjoying a flask of me mum's delicious potato hash. Eagerly passing round a bag of Mother's Pride, white of course, to dip into the Tupperware bowls we ate from. Mother used to sell it, you see. Not the bread, the Tupperware. The kitchen cupboard was a tribute to pastel-coloured plastic. Occasionally she'd throw Tupperware evenings, like today people throw on summer's parties. Except it was the flexibility of the dishes rather than the dildos which excited 1970s housewives. Back then, it was the container they were concerned was airtight, rather than themselves. Other kids went to exotic destinations like Mallorca and Benidorm, returning with gravy-stained faces or their names on bullfighting posters. While my mum and dad clearly knew it was the 70s as we ate Angel Delight Arctic Roll and watched It's a Knockout, they refused to join in with everyone else in the great working-class exodus to the Costa del Sol. Looking back, I got all the worst things about that decade. Coronation chicken vol au vents whilst watching the black and white minstrel show in between power cuts, but didn't get to experience the ultimate 70s holiday cliché, taken off for 2 weeks in Torremolinos. To be honest, I wasn't too fussed with missing out on foreign food and flamenco. It was the journey there and back I wanted to experience. I longed to fly, see? I'd gaze at vapour trails scarring clear blue skies, and spend hours listening to air traffic control handing passing flights to the next sector on a short-band radio. As a kid, the nearest I ever got to the departure lounge on any summer holiday was a family day trip to Heathrow Airport in 1972. It was there I first caught a glimpse of a jumbo jet from the viewing gallery. It was like looking at the future. If Concorde had turned up, I'd probably have spontaneously combusted. Flying defined the era. The supersonic 70s, they called it on the Cadbury's adverts. It was the start of space travel. A few years earlier, I'd stood on the drive with my dad, and he pointed up at the moon incredulously saying, "You can't see them, but there's a couple of blokes walking around up there." It felt like the dawning of a new age. By the year 2000, I figured I'd probably be living on the moon, never mind visiting the bugger, wearing a one-piece jumpsuit and eating Sunday roast in a pill. Air travel with its aspirational, glamorous and sexy little sister. According to the adverts, they even give you free in-flight Cinzano Bianco. I didn't know what Cinzano Bianco was, but figured if John Collins drank it, it must taste good. We were the only ones at the airport that day without a suitcase or a pair of binoculars. So near and yet so far. Looking back, that day was like an aviation lap dance. I could look, but I couldn't get involved. I left frustrated and wished we'd gone to Whipsnade Zoo instead to see the monkeys masturbating, like Chris from up the street had on his holidays. I needn't have worried. They were still at it when we visited a few days later. I realised that the only way I was going to get airborne was to do it myself. But with £1.65 a week pocket money and no passport, there was only one way to do it other than hijacking a plane, which, along with quicksand and celebrity paedophile rings, was all the rage back then, was to join the Air Training Corps. I worked hard in Air Cadets and must have shown some leadership qualities because within 18 months I was the senior cadet in my squadron. Each summer, Flight Sergeant Field was selected for a week-long attachment to an RAF station. But rather than being sent somewhere exotic, such as British Honduras or Cyprus, we'd be dispatched to the Highlands of Scotland, or, if we got really lucky, Germany. I was over the, by now heavily footprinted moon, to be sent to an edgy frontline Cold War airbase. This meant flying in an actual plane. I've still got the sick bag and embossed seatbelt sign I prized from the seat in front of me as souvenirs. Space cadets, as the RAF lads referred to us, would spend each day of the week attached to a different section of the airfield to gain work experience and show us that there were many other jobs available after you failed your pilot selection course at Biggin Hill. One day in air traffic control, blue carpeted calm and forever quietly sipping tea. A day with the military police dog handlers, where we'd be dressed in sacking and provide the prey for the dogs to chase. I wondered if you could really rely on them to tackle a target if they were dressed in a shell suit and Nike Jordans rather than padded sacking, but didn't raise it. On one occasion we were shown the NCO's mess. This is where non-commissioned officers, corporals and sergeants, relax after a long day shouting at their privates. Each squadron has a mascot, a motto and a crest, but this particular squadron also had something else. As we were shown along the corridor outside the bar, we paused in front of a rather grand gold frame mounted on a wall. In the centre of the frame was a light brown, slightly curved cylindrical object. My host stepped back to admire it. "Our pride and joy. What do you think of it?" he asked. His moustache twitched as he stood noticeably to attention, beckoning me to do the same with a deft tap of his cane against my leg. Very nice. Is it the Squadron Frankfurter?" After appreciating geographical reference with a nod of admiration, he shook his head and beckoned me to approach it, so my nose was almost touching the glass. Closer inspection revealed it was crumbling. Is it a religious relic? He thought for a moment, twirling his moustache so it formed a point. "It is to us, Sonny, and to any proud Englishman." He briskly threw his right arm out to the side before bending at the elbow, bringing his hand to his right eyebrow and instructed, "Salute the royal pool, laddie!" I joined him in saluting the shit. This would explain why I needed to be stood to attention. He explained how the Queen's flight would transport the monarch on long-haul flights. On one occasion, a plan was hatched to capture the royal flush. They loaded on an extra loo just for Her Madge and monitored who went for the in-flight number 2, removing and replacing the chemical toilet unit after Lizzie had abdicated the throne. The prize was then dried and coated with plastic bonding agent. Imagine a joke dog poo and you'll get the picture. I was then sworn to secrecy, holding a photo of the Queen and given a cup of coffee and custard cream. Years later, I regaled this tale to a mate who provided personal security to celebrities. Like most of these guys, he was ex-military. His area of work was the royal family, sweeping wherever the Queen would spend the night outside royal residences, checking for bombs and bugs and ensuring no nutters were hiding under the bed. In addition to ensuring the safety of the monarch, his duties also included ensuring the Queen's privacy and dignity weren't compromised. Inside his black rucksack, alongside the electronic gizmos and night vision goggles, was a small potato. After establishing which ensuite loo the monarch would be using, he'd hand the potato to a colleague who was in radio contact and instruct him to drop it into the bowl from toilet seat height whilst he stood silently in adjacent rooms, listening out for the... Only when he was satisfied the regal dump couldn't be heard was the room allowed to be occupied by Her Royal Highness. During my week on the base, I spent a day with the engineers, whose task it was to replace the engines in the Buccaneers and Phantoms and manage the armaments. It was late afternoon and I was sitting nonchalantly on a tarpaulin trailer chatting to a mechanic who was laying on his back on the ground beneath a jet engine. It was the height of the Cold War and talk of Armageddon was everywhere, so I couldn't resist asking the question that had been on my lips ever since getting the posting. Are there any nuclear weapons on this base? Without stopping whatever it was he was doing, he agitatedly replied, "That we are not allowed to divulge. But if you keep kicking your fucking legs against that missile you're sat on, you'll find out soon enough, Sonny." As a student and government artist, footnote, someone who claims unemployment benefit and is said to be drawing the dole, I continued to be unstained by the package holiday experience. I'd watched Judith Chalmers on Wish You Were Here like a spotty youth watches porn, not even daring to imagine it was me experiencing the endless buffet and tasty local cuisine. The alternative, Club 1830, similarly held no mystique, coming across like a sunburnt equivalent of a provincial nightclub, the entry to which demanded proper shoes, a shirt with buttons all the way to your belly button, and an unquestioning attitude to their resident DJ's preference for chart disco over punk, ska, and goth records. It was obvious Club 1830 catered for the mainstream, not weird anorexics like me. Post-holiday stories of blowjobs in hotel whirlpools, gang fights with groups of Geordies, and all-you-can-drink and spew bar crawls from my mainstream mates only served to reinforce my aversion to the package holiday throughout the 80s. This probably explains why in the early 90s I was so eager to accept whatever overseas assignment Mixmag offered me. It was a chance to fly somewhere for free. So, when I boarded that 20s bus in 1997, I was naive to the ways of the package holiday world and utterly horrified at what I found. They say the way to boil a frog is to put it in cold water and slowly heat it so it doesn't notice the subtle change in temperature and boils to death. My first youth package holiday experience was a violent, bubbling cauldron which this frog immediately saw for what it was and hopped away. I hope this explains why that week had such an effect on me and spurred me into action in forming Radical Escapes.